knowledge systems by government and non-governmental institutions. There's also centralization of governance, which defeats the applicability of indigenous knowledge systems because these ones are local based. Right. So, like I said, there is lack of recognition and acknowledgement of IKS, indigenous knowledge systems, in the policy framework. And this is a human rights issue which is downplayed and needs to be reconsidered as a country. And this means there is marginalization of indigenous knowledge systems, which also translates to marginalization of those affected communities. And so there is a fear that if there is no reconsideration, if you don't get a turning point, we are going to lose the indigenous knowledge systems. And there's also limited documentation on these knowledge systems, which also affects climate governance. And there's need to conserve and preserve these indigenous knowledge systems. So basically, there is lack of acceptance of Tonga people's indigenous knowledge systems in the mainstream climate governance practice in our country. And the policy and legal framework put far less attention on these knowledge systems, despite their importance. If you go online and research, scholars put emphasis on the importance of indigenous knowledge systems, but these ones, there's little attention which is put in the policy and legal framework. And then it affects climate change governance and management. So there's need for more research around this area and also archive information in terms of journal articles, books, audio records, documentaries, and all other means. And then also traditional leaders and the Tonga communities themselves, they need to advocate for the legal reforms to recognize the Tonga people's indigenous knowledge systems in climate change governance. And full implementation of Section 264 of the Constitution, talking about devolution, and also recognizing Section 33 of the Constitution, which talk about preserving the indigenous knowledge of communities. And so this can be a departing point since it's already there in the Constitution, and also create awareness on Tonga people's indigenous knowledge systems, and adopt practices of legislating Tonga people indigenous knowledge systems. Like in the case of New Zealand, they have got an Act of Parliament that talks to indigenous knowledge systems of a particular group of people in the country. So this is possible in our country as well. Then also promote social inclusion and equity through inclusive climate legislation. Thank you so much. That's our presentation.